This is WLEX-TV, Central Kentucky's first television station, signing on the air and commencing its inaugural programming on Channel 18, Lexington, Kentucky.
Watch 18 News
on WLEX. Let's all be there.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
18 Action News from Lexington, the heart of the bluegrass.
On WLEX, let's all be there. The news people, in touch with people, we're WLEX-TV.
Good evening and welcome to a celebration of 50 years of television in the bluegrass. I'm Nancy Cox.
And I'm Kevin Christopher. On March 15th, 1955, WLEX-TV signed on the air as Lexington's first television station.
There have been many firsts for WLEX-TV, and we'll share them with you this evening, along with 50 years of memories from the people and programs as familiar as family.
Tonight we celebrate our 50 years, decade by decade, with news, weather, and sports, a little history, and a lot of classic bloopers. Let's start things off in the beginning, the 50s.
John Lennon and Paul McCartney put together their first band. Disneyland opens. Joe DiMaggio gets in the Baseball Hall of Fame. IBM breaks ground for a new typewriter plant. And WLEX-TV 18, Lexington's pioneer television station, signed on the air March 15th, 1955. Snooky Lanson, star of NBC's Your Hip Parade, was on hand, along with many notable dignitaries.
In those early days, Lexington was in the Central Time Zone, and WLEX programming aired from 4 p.m. until midnight. Shows such as the U.S. Steel Hour, Howdy Doody, and The Voice of Firestone were standard fare. Haywood Ledford was our first sports announcer. The first television UK basketball game aired on, you guessed it, WLEX-TV. And Adolph Rupp was hired to present post-game highlights on WLEX and continued with us until his retirement in 1972.
The story of WLEX began 50 years ago, the offspring of an already successful partnership. The Gay Bell Corporation started out as a real estate company in Paris. It also marketed the first seeds for bluegrass and Job's plant spikes. But J. Douglas Gay's love of radio, then television, made him intent on owning the first Lexington TV station. He was described as a modest, quiet man who got up early to work the farm. If you'd seen him at the station dressed in overalls, you wouldn't know he was the director of a bank and trustee of Transylvania University, where the J.D. Gay Library bears his name. Mr. Gay died of complications from Parkinson's disease in 1988. In addition to his partnerships with Mr. Gay, H. Guthrie Bell was a director of National Bank of Paris. He also owned a bottling company in Paris, serving up orange and grape drink. Eventually, Pepsi bought him out. Mr. Bell died of cancer in 1969. Several of his family members served on the board of directors for WLEX for decades.
Well, a lot has changed in 50 years. Anchors, technology, hairstyles. But one thing hasn't changed: our commitment to you, the people of Kentucky. In fact, it's our legacy here at WLEX, one that's been carried on proudly by a lot of people over the decades, but a legacy one man dedicated his life to. Harry Barfield was the president of WLEX-TV from the mid-1960s right up until his death in 1991. A humble and gracious man, Mr. Barfield probably would be uncomfortable with us talking about his influence on local television. But his vision and the standards he set are still very much a part of our story today. Harry Barfield was just 34 years old when WLEX signed on the first time, but he brought discipline as a Navy pilot and experience in World War II to the still developing world of television.
And it really was a leap of faith, you know, not knowing what to expect and what direction it was going to go in. And, you know, was this something that was going to take off? Were people even going to be interested in this medium?
Harry Barfield was the general manager of WLEX for nearly 30 years. Growing up, Patricia Barfield Hicks admits she probably didn't have a full appreciation of how demanding it was to run a television station, or how seriously her father approached it.
At an early age, probably elementary school, thinking, you know, gosh, we've got all these televisions in every room of our house. Every bedroom has a TV, you know, his office, the kitchen. And as soon as he'd get home from the station and the local news or his newscast was still on, it was on in every room that he might walk through or pass by.
The heirlooms that Patricia will pass on to her children reflect not only a successful career in broadcasting, but also a tireless commitment to community.
That was, I think, a big motivator to want Channel 18 to be the best, was for the people of Lexington and Central Kentucky to, you know, provide them with what he felt like they deserved. Not only was it my father, but my mother's commitment.
A wise man wants to find leadership as action, not position. Mr. Barfield put his leadership to work, giving countless hours to a number of causes: the American Cancer Society, Shriners Hospital, the Salvation Army, the Better Business Bureau, the Boy Scouts, and many others. When he passed away in 1991, his peers and even his competitors called him a pioneer. Those close to him used the word gentleman. As WLEX celebrates its past and looks forward to continued growth, Patricia hopes the foundation her father laid is not forgotten.
It would be nice, I think, if all of us had something that we did that we were so passionate and just loved as much as he did broadcasting. And you know, the Central Kentucky community, and frankly the state of Kentucky, you know. And I just hope that, that's just it, I just hope that people will remember.
In another Lexington first in television, to show Lexingtonians this new technology, Frank Perat used his mobile television demonstrator to take television into homes for a demonstration. This old Woody station wagon was outfitted with a 15-foot tower section that mounted on top, with a 15-foot telescoping antenna that took the tower to about 40 feet. A television would be carried into the house and connected with a wire running from the television out to the mobile television demonstrator. Viewers could then tune in. 50 years of live television equals 50 years of bloopers. Lee Cruz pored over the archives to come up with the best of the best. He'll be sharing those with you throughout the evening.
50 years for WLEX-TV. That's a lot of mistakes. So either you gotta, I don't know, sue somebody or laugh at it. Let's start with this.
Involving 6 vehicles is now all clear, and we are now having an accident at Georgetown Street and Douglas. Actually not having an accident, but you know what I mean.
This is symbolic of what all fans would like to do to Ryan Lemon.
But in case history repeats itself, you may want...
You know, I wish someone would have told me I was on the air.
Wow! Cue Lee. Cue him. Cue him. Cue Lee. Come on, where is he? Cue him. Oh, come on. Where's Lee? Cue him. Cue Lee. Talk. Talk. Cue him. Cue Lee. Hello. Cue him. Cue him. Where is he? Cue him. Cue him.
Lee Cruz is there with hundreds of folks who are showing up to
I really wish they would have told me I was on the air.
Did you see Collier? Didn't he look handsome?
Have you ever seen him so dressed up, Lee?
I don't think I've ever seen his head. He always has
He always has a hat on. That's
are you
true.
still singing or are you gargling? What are you doing? Are you just
keep doing it?
Are you just keeping?
Can he hear us? You know what? He might not be able to hear us.
Oh,
Lee, can you hear us?
Come on, don't play. Well, it looks like Lee Cruz can't hear us, but anyway, 300. That was crazy.
Now, this is an unusual method of handling a confrontation. Watch the Channel 18 reporter as she just decides to scream over and over. You think, actually, that was a pretty successful method of handling the confrontation. Where do we get our training? Well, watch this training session that we execute on one another. This is Marvin Bartlett going through it.
She liked it. She wanted it. Will you do it again? Not with that woman.
You guys remember the show Hee Haw? Apparently, Tim Weldon was a huge fan of Junior Samples. You know how they often do this? They would make this pop up. Watch this.
Just 47% for some of the companies, 300,000 customers. GTE took his case to Frankfurt this morning, and Bureau Chief Tim Weldon is waiting to tell us what happened.
You would think for people who know that a newscast starts at a certain time of day, every day, the same hour, they'd be ready.
Another sign of this sub-zero weather, we're talking about frozen water pipes.
18 Action News. From Lexington, the heart of the bluegrass, for all Central Kentucky. This is the News Hour.
For much of the horse world,
the suicide rate here in Mercer County is among the highest in the state. I'm Tim Weldon. I'll have that story.
Mike Shohan was the Capital Summary for the week of November 14th.
Okay, so much for that crap. Let's do the Chrissy report.
We'll have more of LEX-18's 50th anniversary celebration coming up in just a moment.
People out There's one business in Lexington that was especially happy to see WLEX-TV sign on the air 50 years ago. When Barney Miller's opened on Main Street, there was no TV. So in 1922, Barney Sr. sold car parts. But by the time Channel 18 hit the air, Barney Miller was cashing in on the new technology of the day.
As far as I know, we sold the first radio and the first television in the state of Kentucky.
Barney Miller was a visionary by many accounts. When the new medium called television began to make its way across the country, he could see this was the start of something big.
My grandfather was a graduate of MIT and just really into, science and neat things like that. So I think that's what dragged him into that type of technology.
Barney Miller first saw television at the World's Fair in the 1940s. When WLEX went on the air in 1955, the future of the business was set.
I'm sure that was a dramatic help, a little before my time, but yeah, having some local broadcast, I'm sure, was a huge shot in the arm to selling televisions. Much better reception that way. You didn't have to look at a fuzzy picture all the time that way.
Harry Miller carried on the family tradition. Business grew and television continued to change. And the little store on Main Street changed right along with it.
For a long period of time, television and radio didn't change a lot. We went from black and white to color. That was a pretty dramatic change. But in the last 20 years, electronics has changed more than in the 60 years before that. So we're really in a dynamic industry right now.
Now, this Barney Miller carries on the family business like his father and grandfather before him, willing to adapt right along with technology.
With high-definition televisions and multi-room audio and touchscreen systems and whole-house video servers and you name it, it's pretty amazing right now. Literally, we do have to reinvent ourselves every few years depending on what technology is out there.
And the next big thing, HD TV. Miller says the market is ready and waiting for more local programming in high def.
HD TV has been the biggest thing to come along in our industry and, since color TV. It's that big of an issue. And the more local broadcasting on, the better. It's literally a 3 times better picture, much better sound, multi-channel sound. So it's fantastic, and we're real excited about the future.
The late 1940s and the early 50s were the best of times for Kentucky basketball. August 13th, 1948, the United States Olympic basketball team featuring Kentucky's Fabulous Five win the gold, defeating France 64-21 in London.
Well, of course, is Kenny Rollins. I think the greatest defensive player that I ever had. I'll say that right now. And over at the other guard position, of course, was Ralph Beard. A good defensive man, but offensive as well.
1951, led by Big Bill Spivey and Cliff Hagan, who is under the weather, Kentucky beat Kansas State for their third NCAA championship since 1948. 1957, in a Kentucky Derby that should never be forgotten, perhaps the best jock of all time, Willie Shoemaker, forgot where he was.
The arrow points out Gallant Man with Willie standing in the irons. Shoemaker gets Gallant Man going again, and in a sizzling finish, both horses hit the wire together. But Iron Leaves wins by a nose. Gallant Man is second, Round Table third, and Bold Ruler finishes fourth.
At the time, no one knew it'd be the last NCAA title for the man who was #1 in the history of college basketball. Adolph called them the Fiddling Five. 1958, led by Vern Hatton, who poured in 30 as Kentucky beat Seattle 84-72 in Louisville for their fourth NCAA championship. Alan Cutler, LEX 18 Sports.
Droughts, floods, record cold, record heat, ice storms, blizzards, tornadoes, and a lot of pretty darn good nice days mixed in there. That signifies the weather that we've seen over the last 50 years around central and eastern Kentucky. Of course, we remember the extremes of weather. And during the 50s, about the most extreme event that we saw, especially in the middle and latter part of the 50s, one of those droughts. In fact, the drought was so severe over most of the country, we even had a global warming scare. If anything has benefited from the technology change in television over the last half century, weather is certainly it. When WLEX-TV signed on back in the 50s, weather was only a minimal part of the daily broadcast. But since weather is something that affects everyone, it wasn't long before a sponsored weather segment became part of the daily routine. Now, looking back at the old pictures here, I mean, it looks like kind of a cross between a college classroom and Mr. Wizard's laboratory. And I really love the cloud chart. That's something, could you imagine showing an alto stratus cloud coming in here? Looking back at the old pictures, too, one thing that really amazes me is how much ingenuity went into creating something, a product, that really was able to look different.
You know, there's a lot of inherent danger with being a news photographer, but sometimes our guys are just accident prone.
One is a net to scoop out any dead leaves or... Oh! No one was seriously hurt. Oh. Oh, we're obviously very bad conditions out here on the road tonight.
This is photographer Steve Collier, who volunteered to be stunned. Hasn't been the same since. You want to see how he does about the burlap?
Want to go? Let's do it. Yeah, here comes photographer Steve Collier without burlap on the fun side. Now this, I don't know if he hurts himself. We could be liable, but
I think he enjoys it. Actually,
this is not being supervised by any one of our professional ride operators.
Yeah, don't try this at home, kid.
But here he comes, and it looks like he's all right. Yeah. Now look at that. Yeah, see, we have some dew on the slide.
I hope that's dew. I hope that's due, is what I'm saying.
I'm not testing it.
He may have got the incontinent ride. I'm not. We'll have more bloopers coming up in a moment, plus my favorite blooper of all time. That's on the way as we continue with LEX 18's 50th anniversary celebration.
The 60s, the decade when Camelot was more than a musical. Baby boomers became teenagers. I-75 was making its way through the bluegrass state, and man first stepped on the moon.
It was a time of major innovations and firsts. In 1962, WLEX-TV became Kentucky's first full-color television station, one of the original 34 stations in the country broadcasting in full color. WLEX-TV was the first Lexington station to present a full hour of early evening news. And Sue Wiley became the first female anchor in Kentucky.
For 3 days, I walked in the shoes of an Eddyville penitentiary guard. I wore her uniform, I wore the stresses and the pressures of her job.
Sue Wiley set the pace, and nobody ever caught up to her. For 30 years, she taunted her guests and titillated her audience. On Noon Today, and especially your government.
Are either of you armed sitting in the studio today?
No. No, we're not armed.
Okay.
The Imperial Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, Ronald Reagan, George Wallace, even Jesse Jackson. They were all charmed by Sue just long enough to realize that she wasn't your average local news personality. Longtime Your Government panelist Bob Hensley says the show with Jackson was one of the highlights of his career.
Jackson sat down and he started asking some rather pointed questions, and he started looking at his watch, and he started looking at a couple of his entourage for the signal that, hey, this interview is over, and Sue just kept the show going. And I remember some of the national media people just looking in astonishment that Sue had basically just taken this man and physically sat him down and started the program.
You are rushed, you are harried, you seem very uptight here. Are you having any fun at all?
You sort of enjoyed it, you know, while you were doing it, and when you got through, you realized that Sue'd already put one over on you before you knew what had happened to you.
Why can't you, right this moment, tell us why you took the Fifth Amendment, which has been the question that has puzzled the public for a long time?
That's correct.
I always felt comfortable, but I also felt like if there's anything you didn't want to have told, you better not go on Sue's program.
But Sue's victims are also her friends.
If you see Sue Wiley at a cocktail party, or if you see her at Mary Lou Whitney's Derby party, she's the kind of person you want to go up to because you want to talk to Sue, because she's fun and she's vivacious.
Sue's candid, classy, and captivating, and she forever changed the way we do news in Lexington.
The dream game of college basketball, matching the nation's #1 and 2 ranked ball clubs. Kentucky.
In the 1960s, one game dominated a decade and completely changed the face of an entire sport. And it didn't even happen in Kentucky. The date was March 19th, 1966. The place, Maryland. The NCAA National Championship game pitted a giant versus an unknown. Tradition versus youth. Black versus white. Kentucky versus Texas Western. Affectionately known as Rupp's Runts, the all-white Kentucky team had only lost one game all season and was the top-ranked team in the nation. This came at a time when some wondered if it was time for Rupp to retire. But the 1966 team changed all that. With guys like Pat Riley, Larry Conley, and Louis Dampier, it seemed like a team destined for greatness. Rupp had recruited guys like Wes Unseld and Butch Beard, but both chose to go to Louisville. Neither wanted to be the first African American to wear the Kentucky blue. It was perhaps more a sign of the times than of UK or Coach Rupp. The Southeastern Conference had not yet integrated, and several of the schools said they wouldn't play Kentucky. So Adolph Rupp once again took his squad to the national title game, looking for #5 against a Texas Western team ranked 3rd in the country with an identical 27-1 record.
Texas Western will put the ball in play. Bobby Joe Hill, 5'10", the playmaker for this fine Texas Western team, the underdogs in this game. He'll set up the play underneath the lap, and he scores!
From start to finish, the Miners picked the Cats apart, eventually beating Kentucky 72-65.
In the last 2 minutes, we knew we weren't going to get that thing done. It was absolutely hopeless. It was a horrible, horrible feeling.
While Kentucky lost that game, it signaled a new era in college basketball, and it's still thought of by many as the most significant game ever played.
Before the dark ages of the FCC clampdown, when a person made a mistake such as you'll see, you didn't sweat it so much. Then again, maybe you did.
And what do graham crackers have to do with sex?
I don't know, but I love graham crackers.
Oh.
And sex ain't bad either, but...
Stone. Station break.
Tom, you probably saved me at least 20 to 30 minutes of constipation.
And we'll tell you about some smelly gas in Ag News. Stay with us.
Thanks for that.
What can you take off as far as clothes?
Clothes you can take off as long as they are specifically for the business.
In 3, 2, 1. Take 3.
I'll never believe the Marlboro Man was impotent, though. I just never will.
More moments like that coming up as we continue with LEX 18's 50th anniversary celebration.
News at Sunrise is Central Kentucky's #1 source for morning news.
Wayne Bell was one of the first personalities on WLEX, and back then, that meant you did it all. He was the host of a kids show, he did commercials, even helped out on the cooking show. Now, looking back, Mr. Bell says after his family, some of the best memories of his nearly 80 years revolve around Channel 18.
We signed on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
When Wayne Bell started his career at WLEX,
We had one camera. It was a black and white camera.
things were quite different.
In those days, we had no tape, no videotape or anything of that nature. So anything you did live, and we couldn't tape our commercials.
It was 1958. Bell had done a stint in the Merchant Marines, spent some time in radio, then accepted an offer from Harry Barfield to enter the still new world of television. In the early days of TV, just about everything was an experiment.
Well, it was a great time. In those days, you did everything yourself. You had very little help. If you wanted to get a sports story, I was called a sports director, but I also did weather and news.
Bell also hosted the Adolph Rupp Show.
Coach Rupp was quite a conversationalist. He would talk and talk and talk. And the only way I could shut him up was to kick him on the shins. And he'd say, "Oh, okay," and he'd stop, we'd do a commercial.
Since leaving Channel 18 in 1965, Bell has watched with amazement how technology has transformed the industry.
In the days that I did the weather at 18, we had a weather board we rolled out. It was on rollers. You took a magic marker and you drew the highs, the lows, the occluded fronts, where the rain was, the snow, the fog, whatever. We didn't have the radar, all the technology that the people have today.
Wayne and his wife Tibby are now enjoying retirement with their family. But television is not just a distant memory. Wayne may have handed down his penchant for the spotlight. His daughter Marcia was Miss Kentucky in 1978. His granddaughter is stage and film actress Laura Bell Bundy. One grandson, an athlete at Notre Dame. Another may follow his footsteps into the world of sports broadcasting.
It was my life. The friendship, the camaraderie in which I had with the people of that day still lingers in my heart.
The 60s were a pretty tranquil decade weather-wise, not only around Kentucky, but really around most of the nation for that matter. Now, of course, there were exceptions thrown in. There was an F3 tornado that went through Estill and Lee counties. There were tornadoes in Scott County. Even Lexington saw a tornado during the 1960s. But for the most part, the weather around Kentucky was pretty quiet.
You know, the #1 rule of broadcasting is know your own name. I would think that would be elementary, right? You would know your own name. Well, sometimes you just lock up.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Brooks.
And I'm Melanie Glasscock. I'm Nancy Cox, in for Melanie Glasscock.
The LEX 18 High School Sports Zone. I'm Ryan Lemon with my good friend, easy for you to say, Alan Cutler.
You know, it's really hard to finish strong when you can't remember your own name.
All right, thanks a lot for joining us this fine afternoon, and I'm
Good evening, I'm Robin Rabbit.
And I'm Tom Kelly. Tom Kenny, I should say. Paul Kelly is on assignment tonight.
Now, my buddy Carl Nathy here, he just realized his own name.
They want it. Carl Nathy, that's me, has more in this week's Outdoors Report.
And sometimes we just don't know where we are.
This is Jean Robinson live at Maine and Woodland and Vine. Let me try that again. Live at Maine and Vine Street for our 18 Action News.
Good morning, I'm Lisa Kaplan, in for Dia Davidson.
And I'm Tom Ackerman. I'm Bernadette Woods in for Tom Ackerman. And our reporter, Dick Farmer, is there right now for a live report. Oh.
Hey, yeah. More coming up in a moment as we continue with LEX 18's 50th anniversary celebration.
Nixon was out, smiley faces were in. It was the 70s. We still had to walk across the room to click on TV favorites such as Sanford and Son, Ironside, Flip Wilson, and Little House on the Prairie. We had devastating tornadoes and a national basketball championship.
Tom Hammond was WLEX sports director, and Sue Wiley's Your Government hosted Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, governors, legislators, and national luminaries. But Sue Wiley also liked to have a little fun.
First impressions do count and appearances do matter, and right or wrong, that's the way it is. And so we decided to stage a little experiment based on images and how people respond to them. This motley crew you're seeing is pretending to be hitchhikers. We've dressed them up to be, number one, the clean-cut, young man, shoe shine, necktie, glasses, and very serious demeanor. And number two, our hippie. Long hair, blue jeans, out-of-shape t-shirts, cigarette in the mouth and all. Number three, the pathetic old lady, weighed down with years and gray hair and a couple of shopping bags to boot. And number four, the sex kitten, bare midriff and kissy-faced. And we stationed these four along a busy Lexington thoroughfare to thumb a ride and see what happened. Well, what happened was that the hippie got no ride at all, not even a single slowdown. And surprisingly, that nice clean-cut young fellow fared no better at all. Not a single car stopped for him, even though he represented the kind of man that mothers always say their daughters should marry. And what's more, that poor old lady, who easily could have been in need of help, didn't get a ride or an inquiry either. True, one car did slow down for a look, but speeded up very quickly after it got it. The only one in the group who had any luck at all getting a ride was, well, guess who? Miss Bare Midriff.
Hitchhiking is a dangerous game and a hard one, too. This is Sue Wiley reporting for Channel 18 News.
Henry Kenyon, a longtime and beloved member of the WLEX-TV family, has seen a lot of changes. He was here at the very beginning.
For 35 years, Henry Kenyon's been part of the WLEX directing staff. He remembers the 1960 Channel 18 and its first studio camera very well.
Yeah, well, it had a joystick like an airplane.
And how many?
We flew it like an airplane.
How many cameras did we have in the studio?
One camera, no camera person.
And the talent was in there all along?
All along. We had 3 lights mounted on the camera. We had green, yellow, and red.
Like a traffic light?
Right.
Well, that sounds pretty basic, but not as basic as the way you cued the talent from the control room.
I said, well, since they always complain about us making noise, why don't we stomp on the floor? So we devised a set of signals. Stomp 3 times meant 1 minute. Stomp twice was 30 seconds. And when you stomped the last time, shut up. It was exciting. You know, to come into an industry that was bigger than life, like being in films, I had the impression that when I came out here that I would see stars, Wayne Bell, and all those guys would be riding up in limousines. And I waited around for 5 days. I would run to the door, and I didn't see a limousine, or I didn't see a chauffeur.
Well, Henry, you've seen so many changes here. What hasn't changed here over the years?
But there's always lively excitement going on, always sense of adventure. You never know what to expect from 1 minute to the next.
You know, it's the technical people behind the scenes that are really the lifeblood of a broadcast. They're the ones who control everything, and if they were to mess up, well, it's not really them that looks bad, is it?
Who doesn't remember the old children's classic game, Where's Cutler?
Another cold front has come right in behind that. My computer did it again.
Here's Stuart with some kids seeing themselves on a monitor, and it's like a moth to a flame, which sort of becomes an issue for Stuart when you can't see the monitor to do the weather.
I was the star just a minute ago. Let me look over your shoulder. And finally, tomorrow night, expect a few showers to be disappearing, mostly clear.
Bill Meck has never sounded so good.
We can't hear him either.
Come on over, Bill. You got it, pal.
You know,
this may be a first on live
TV. This proves that this is live TV, doesn't
Let me borrow this, John. Here you go, buddy. Okay, now if you'll go ahead and be so kind as to take the graphics full screen, please.
We'll go ahead and check out LEX-18 Storm Tracker dual Doppler as well.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, Lee. Carry on.
Let me grab my backup clicker here. Here, catch. Okay, that one going to work. Okay, that one doesn't work either. I'll go to the backup clicker. Excuse me just a second. Don't leave your seats. Where is the backup clicker?
Oh,
there it is.
Oh, she's
Hold on, I got a knot in the backup clicker. They say, is it live television? The answer is yes. Here, push this for me on occasion. Okay. Satellite view shows the clouds coming back across Kentucky. Some rain up to our north. Push the button, Billy. We've got the rain out to the west. Scattered showers. Push the button, Billy.
Right, Billy.
That'll be moving across Kentucky this evening. The showers will be headed across and on to the east, and then the warm air will be coming our direction for tonight and tomorrow. Push the button again, Billy. Highest mark going to be in the 60s.
Foster Powell murder trial.
Were the women high on cocaine when they admittedly killed 5 people last April?
Wrong tape, but she does look smashed.
This is LEX-18 reporter Mike Taylor back in the day, and he doesn't realize that they're having trouble back at the studio. But you know what? You can always count on a director to be calm and cool to guide you through.
Oh, what is it? He's a doctor on call for surgery. Oh, shoot. Let's come back out of it. Come back out. Here we come to live. Live's up.
Governor got all that time, and James.
Live's up.
Yeah, we're coming back.
What happened, Kev? I don't.
That was Craig Wall
2-3 city emergency.
On a snow emergency. We will be down here at the Emergency Operations
Center
2-4
with
then? More on the snow conditions in Lexington later.
Okay, here we come back to Split.
Everybody is struggling today, and we are not alone.
If Kentucky has a new president, and he's from right here in Lexington. He is not Brian Collins, he is Dr. Ray Hornback.
Thanks to the guys in the back who did a marvelous job getting us on the air, really.
Thank you all for suffering through our power failure with us, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 5:30.
Watch this techie who just realized he's still in the Federal Witness Protection Program.
We'll continue with our 50th anniversary celebration. And of course, we've got Alan Cutler moments. He's been here since Moby Dick was a minnow. You don't think he hadn't messed up? We got that on the way.
70s, but none of us will ever forget the turbulent weather of that decade. Bill Meck takes a look back.
The decade of the 70s saw a change in that tranquil weather pattern. In fact, April 3rd, 1974 saw the worst outbreak of tornadoes in recorded history occur on April 3rd. Now, that tornado outbreak was pretty much centered on Kentucky. We had 27 tornadoes that day. Some of them, in fact, most of them were big tornadoes, F3 and F4. It's a day then that many lives were lost. There were millions of dollars in property damage. It'd be interesting to see how we would handle that kind of weather situation today, given the technology that we have with the MaxTrack Live Doppler. By the late 1970s, thoughts changed from tornadoes and severe weather to cold. In fact, the winters of record occurred in 77, 78, and 79. These winters were so severe not only in Kentucky, but nationally, that some folks were even thinking an ice age was beginning. As time advanced from the 60s into the 70s, the weather product began to change, and the more traditional weather guy that you're used to seeing came into being. This was also a time, though, when graphic content was very limited. The next generation of weather technology really wasn't all that much compared to what we're seeing today, but it involved creating a map display using a dry erase board or something with a grease pencil. Some stations even use magnetic maps. Now, this sort of set up a student-teacher relationship with the meteorologist and the viewer at home. The weather guy would actually be on here, drawing his weather symbols on here live on camera, telling you the story of what would be going on about the cold air headed toward Kentucky. Now, my career actually goes back to the very tail end of this technology 20-some years ago. I'll tell you, though, with me having the artistic ability of a third grader, the next innovation, which came in the latter part of the 80s, computers, helped me out a whole lot. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest technological revolution for broadcasting weather on television occurred in the late 70s with a process called chroma key. Now, that's the technical TV word for it. You may know it simply as a different name, the green screen. The green screen is really, that's all that's ever behind me. That's all, when we're doing the weather, that is ever back there. The process, how it works, anything our eye, the human eye sees as this color green, the camera is going to see as weather map or whatever source we happen to want to put back there. In fact, it allows us to advance from that simple technology of one map drawing on it to showing you literally an infinite number of possibilities, more graphics, more ways to help us tell the story about the weather. And it also allows us to have a little fun along the way, because you can make the weather guy disappear.
In no other decade of the WLEX era was sports more prominent than in the 1970s. The decade started with Tom Paine breaking the color barrier and becoming the first African-American to play basketball at the University of Kentucky during the 1970-71 season. One season later, the great Adolph Rupp retired as the UK head coach. Rupp was the Kentucky head coach for 42 years. He won 4 NCAA championships, 1 NIT championship, an Olympic gold medal, and 27 Southeastern Conference championships. When he retired, Rupp had 876 career wins, a record at the time that stood for 25 years until Dean Smith broke it in 1997.
We had a lot of fun. To those of you that went down the glory road with me, my eternal thanks.
Horse racing also captured the spotlight in the 70s with 3 Triple Crown winners, the first being one of the best thoroughbreds of all time in Secretariat, who won the Triple Crown in 1973. Secretariat set the record in winning the Kentucky Derby, a record that still stands today. He also ran what many consider one of the greatest feats in all of sports when he won the Belmont by an incredible 31 lengths.
Secretariat to the wire, an unbelievable, an amazing performance.
4 years later, horse racing had another Triple Crown winner in the undefeated Seattle Slew in 1977. Racing experts continue to say that Seattle Slew was one of the best, both on the track and in the breeding shed. He lived to be 28 years old and ironically died on the 25th anniversary of winning the Kentucky Derby in 2002. 1 year later, horse racing had another Triple Crown winner in Affirmed. Affirmed was the 11th and what would prove to be the last horse to win the Triple Crown. He will forever be linked to his famous Triple Crown duels with Aladar. The last one, a breathtaking neck-and-neck dash down the final 7 furlongs of the Belmont.
Affirmed and Aladar, heads apart. Affirmed's got a nose in front as they come onto the wire.
Affirmed died in 2001 at the age of 26. One of the best eras of the UK football program happened in 1976 and 1977. Led by Fran Kersey in 1976, UK was co-champions of the Southeastern Conference and beat North Carolina 21-0 in the Peach Bowl. It had been 25 years since Kentucky had last played in a bowl game. Then the next season in 77, Kentucky went on to one of the best seasons in UK football history. Led by Derek Ramsey, Art Still, among others, Kentucky finished the season 10-1 and ranked 5th in the country. But the Cats couldn't play in a bowl game due to NCAA probation. The 1970s closed with another NCAA basketball championship for the University of Kentucky. The year was still 1978. It had been 20 years since UK had cut down the nets, but led by UK's own Jack Goose Gibbons, Kentucky beat Duke 94-88. Gibbons put on one of the best performances in the history of the NCAA tournament, scoring 41 points in the championship game. It was UK's 5th NCAA championship. It was Joe B. Hall's first and only NCAA championship as the UK coach. Kentucky finished the season 30-2. Covering the sports highlights of the 1970s, I'm Ryan Lemon.
Throughout the half century, LEX-18 has fought one common enemy, and it's not another broadcast station. It's gravity.
Meaning a little warmer air and definitely drier air. I'll have the forecast.
It attempts to regulate lawn fertilizers.
Take care.
And as John Wesley Brett reports, housing officials can do very little to help them.
We're keeping an eye on Tropical Storm Chris.
It is extremely cold across much of central Kentucky, and pardon me just for a second, you will notice over my head that we have some clouds back over towards Ohio and Indiana.
It's one thing to go after our earrings, but come on, now you've gone too far, Gravity. It's starting to go after our kids.
You know, if someone gives you flowers,
By the way, that child wasn't hurt. He now works in sales here. More of our 50th anniversary celebration coming up in a moment, plus my favorite blooper of all time is on the way. Don't go anyplace.
finding the furniture.
WLEX, let's all be there. There's no better place to be part of what's happening. At the heart of what's happening, you'll want to be there. We're fresh and exciting, 18 News is inviting. Our quality's showing, and together we're growing. It must be WLEX, let's all be there. Working hard together to show Kentucky that we care. On 18 News, let's all be there. WLEX, let's all be there. It must be 18 News, let's all be there. Kentuckians all together in the moments that we share. On WLEX, let's all be there. Oh, the sun shines bright on my old Kentucky home. On WLEX, let's all be there.
In the 80s, we were entertained by The Cosby Show, Family Ties, The Golden Girls, and Cheers. Topping the news, the first test tube baby is born. Barney Clark gets the first artificial heart, and the world watches Prince Charles and Lady Diana become husband and wife.
Downtown Lexington got a complete makeover with Victorian Square and the Festival Market. Martha Lane Collins was the first female governor in the Commonwealth, and when she brought Toyota to Kentucky, you heard it first from LEX 18 News.
Some of the media would come up to me and say, now what makes you think you're qualified to be governor? You know, because I was a school teacher.
But in 1983, Martha Lane Collins went from the classroom into the history books.
I think it was good for Kentucky. I think it's still good for Kentucky, frankly.
The Shelby County native never dreamed of being governor, but was drafted into politics by Wendell Ford. 3 campaigns later, for Supreme Court clerk, then lieutenant governor, she became the first and still only woman to be elected governor of Kentucky.
It was good for us because it showed that we were progressive and that we, were willing, we were open and willing to change and willing to do different things, and I think it was good.
First on her agenda, education, but Collins herself admits probably the biggest part of her legacy will be Toyota.
It was one of the greatest team efforts I've seen.
As Kentucky competed for Toyota, WLEX was also in a heated contest, trying to own the biggest story of the year. We were the first to report that Kentucky beat out Alabama, and Toyota would make its new home in central Kentucky.
It's not uncommon for me to go out shopping or be somewhere and somebody walks up and says, thank you. You know, my husband has a job there, or it's made a difference in our life, or whatever. So it was worth the hours, the pressure, definitely.
Technology progressed by leaps and bounds in the 80s, as did our ability to forecast the weather. Bill Meck explains.
As we transition to the 80s, the cycles of nature continue, and we saw weather similar to what we saw during the 1960s. The weather during the 1980s was pretty tranquil for the most part. One of the big reasons why it was so tranquil is because we were suffering through some very severe droughts. In fact, the droughts became severe enough that for some folks, hay had to be trucked in from other parts of the country to help feed our animals. During the middle and latter part of the 80s, a change took place again in weather technology. This was the innovation of the weather graphics computer. Now, at first, these were very simple machines, and not many TV stations had them at first. But as the decade advanced, more and more did so. Now, as you look back at these old graphic images, keep in mind it looks like kind of an Atari system compared to what you're used to seeing today.
The 1980s were filled with change and controversy, especially at the University of Kentucky. In 1982, Jerry Claiborne took over the UK football program, replacing Fran Kersey. After going 0-10-1 in his first season, Claiborne then led his Cats to back-to-back appearances in the Hall of Fame Bowl in 1983 and then winning it in 1984. After leading his Kentucky Wildcats to the Final Four in 1984, Joe B. Hall stepped down 1 year later after 13 seasons as the UK head basketball coach. His replacement, Eddie Sutton, who once said he would crawl to Lexington to get the UK job. In his first year, Sutton was named National Coach of the Year. But following the 1988 season, the basketball world came tumbling down on True Blue fans. An Emory package mailed from assistant coach Dwayne Casey in the UK basketball office to the home of recruit Chris Mills allegedly popped open in Los Angeles, revealing $1,000 in cash. That event triggered a major NCAA investigation into the UK basketball program. Eric Manuel was accused of cheating during his entrance exams. When the dust had settled, UK was on probation. They were banned from postseason play for 2 years. Athletic director Cliff Hagan, Eddie Sutton, and his entire coaching staff resigned.
What we need right now is folks to help us through these tough times, and they're going to be tough times. And whoever comes in here to coach it had better understand that. We're heading for some tough times, but we'll get through those, and when we do, we're going to have a lot of fun with the good times.
Just when Kentucky was at its darkest hour, Rick Pitino rode into town. A once proud program and state were in despair. Pitino made all of that change. The Cats were back in the Elite Eight in 3 years, in the Final Four in 4 years, and became a national champion in 7 years. UK basketball was back in their glory days, and Pitino was the ringleader. Covering the sports in the 80s, I'm Ryan Lemon.
This is my favorite blooper that we have here at the LEX-18. This involves former Sunrise anchors Michael Brooks and Beth Pugh. Michael has a slip of the tongue. He mispronounces a phrase. Now, the phrase is supposed to be sealed his records.
He wants to seal Carneal's records from the 7th through the 9th grades. Now, the attorney representing the family is
Paging Dr. Freud, line 1, Dr. Freud, line 1.
Potential for committing violence. And taking a look at some other news. You know, everyone knows counterfeiting does not pay. I'm sorry. But the confiscated products can still go to good use, especially if they're earmarked for Kentucky.
I know, it's okay. Let me help you.
Beth, bless her heart, she's trying to help them out the best she can. The crew, on the other hand, is in hysterics. Some of them are laying on the floor. Others have just gone home. There's no point in continuing. Michael is seeing his career flash in front of his eyes. Right now, he's thinking, if I could get it together, I really need to update my resume because it doesn't look good from here on out.
Sorry. Now that is funny. You know what? It's a race against time for a Lexington drugstore. That's a trip back in time.
That's right. And as photojournalist.
Oh, photojournalist Scott Morshow says it's the end of an era for a unique experience.
More LEX-18 bloopers coming up in a moment as we continue with our 50th anniversary celebration.
People, that's what the news is all about. People, that's why we're reaching out for you. News people, in touch with people. We're 18 Action News. The news people, in touch with people. We're LEX-TV.
You know, sports in this town's just not the same as it used to be. There's no excitement. I can remember when every game was the most important game, and every win was like a championship. Now there's no intensity, no killer instinct. But all of that's going to change.
Why, Pop?
Why? I'll tell you why. Alan Cutler's back.
Alan Cutler and 18 Sports on the move.
Hey everyone, I'm Dia Davidson. Early one morning in August of 1985, WLEX offered viewers something never seen before on Lexington television sets, a full-length early morning newscast. It was only 30 minutes long and success was not a sure thing, but almost immediately, Kentucky Sunrise found its way into the hearts, minds, and homes of early birds everywhere. The show and the colorful personalities on the show quickly became a vital part of Central Kentucky's morning routine, and for nearly 20 years, the relationship has only grown stronger. Many men and women have had the honor and privilege of sitting in the Sunrise anchor chair through the years, beginning with show creator Bonnie Krasick and her co-anchor Mike Berry. Now, we don't have a copy of the first show, but let's take a look at this and see if it still doesn't bring back some wonderful Sunrise memories.
WLEX-TV, Lexington. Good morning. From 18 News, this is Kentucky Sunrise.
Good morning, I'm Bonnie Krasick, and welcome to Kentucky Sunrise. It's been a long time since I've said that. The other day when they told me that WLEX was going to have a 50th birthday, I realized it was 20 years ago that Kentucky Sunrise first started. Back then, you didn't have every station in the country with a morning show. just a few big cities. And I remember when John Duvall, who was the general manager of the station, came to me and said, "We want to start a morning show." I thought he was crazy at first. Then when I realized what time I was going to have to get up, I knew he was insane, but I was a driven person. And we started Kentucky Sunrise. At that time, we didn't even know how to do the show, and I just thought, well, I'd worked in radio. People listen to the radio in the morning, so Kentucky Sunrise would be radio with video. And that's exactly what it was. People would listen to us, or they would watch us for a second, or they'd brush their teeth and get dressed. And it was radio with video, and it seemed to work a lot. In fact, when I think about it, I think we had 50% of the people who were turned on to TVs during that time were watching Kentucky Sunrise, and I'm really proud of that.
And then I started hearing the rumors about starting an early morning newscast. And I know there were bunches of us that thought there's absolutely nobody in the world who's going to be up that early in the morning that's going to want to watch a half-hour newscast.
The basic concept stayed the same, and I think it's still the same with that show, and that is you just come in every morning, you take a complex world, and you try to make it simple.
Woke up one morning, looked outside, and we had one of the infamous Lexington ice storms, and everything was just nothing but a glaze of ice. And without thinking, I had no idea what to do. I knew that there was no way I could drive to work. So the police actually came and picked me up to get me here because we were the only ones that could tell people to stay off the streets because the ice storm was totally unexpected. Not that the weatherman happened to be wrong at that time, but occasionally that does happen.
I remember one morning oversleeping and waking up very, very late. I was supposed to be here by, I guess, around 4, and I woke up about 3:45.
I would always try to be here by about 3:45, but I was always pushing it. I mean, I was the type that, you know, I would sleep till the very last minute, rush to work, and take 3 minutes before we went on the air to do my hair and makeup, which in retrospect was probably not a good thing.
I was very into coffee, I do remember that, and I'd always put my clothes out the night before so that when I'd stumble out of bed in the morning, I didn't have to think, what was I going to wear?
I had a really difficult pregnancy with my first child, Connor, and I was very nauseous in the mornings, horrible morning sickness. But we had a discreetly placed garbage can under the news desk, and made a couple of quick runs, you know, on commercial breaks to the bathroom. And luckily, you know, no disasters. I had a co-anchor who was very supportive and could kind of jump in there and help me when I needed it, and so we made it. But viewers could really relate to that, and to this day, I get people coming up to me, "How's your son? Oh my gosh, he's 11 years old. I remember when you were pregnant."
I sat in on Sunrise for Robin Rabbit when she had her first child, and I was not used to getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Not that anyone gets used to that, but one morning in particular, I'd gotten up at 3 a.m. and when you do that, you're ready for lunch much earlier than most people. So we're sitting around the newsroom, it's 8 o'clock, and I was starving and had this craving for a Whopper from Burger King. And I start talking around to the other people on the show and the production crew on the morning show, and it started catching on. Everyone wanted a Whopper, so I call up Burger King and I said, "Hey, this is the gang at Channel 18, and I know you're still serving breakfast right now, but how much trouble would it be to fire up the grill and make some Whoppers?" Well, the guy was speechless for about 30 seconds, but then he said, "Well, sure, why not?" So we get up a whole order of about 8 or 10 Whoppers and go over there, and we're eating Burger King hamburgers at 8:30 in the morning.
Oh, Kahuna Day. Yeah, Kahuna Day. I don't even have a clue how the heck this started, but for some reason all the crew, and of course that didn't include the anchor people, we were invited to join it, but we couldn't. They all started dressing in Hawaiian costumes every Friday.
Another favorite memory of mine was the birthday song. If I knew you were coming, I'd have baked the cake, and we played it every morning when we would show the birthday credits on the screen. And one particular morning, we had a whole classroom full of kids who came in and sang the birthday song.
One time we had the Cookie Monster, and that was a lot of fun.
One of my best memories is just working with Lee Cruz. He cracked me up almost every morning. If he didn't make me mad, he cracked me up. And I loved his impressions of Bill Bryant from Channel 27 and Tubby Smith. I'd yell out, "Hey Lee, do Tubby," and he'd go, "I can't do it. He does it much better than me." Or I'd say, "Hey Lee, do Bill Bryant." I mean, we were on the air and we didn't even care.
Oh, I remember something I did on the air. It was horrific. Stuart Shepard was talking about dense fog, and I was no good at making segues into weather. I said something about, well, speaking of fat, Stuart Shepard's in with the weather. Well, Stuart, speaking of fat, I guess there's fat air out there.
Excuse me.
See, I'm known for this. Putting my mouth.
I don't think I'm sticking around for the weather.
Stuart, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way. That's not what I was talking about.
We'll have the weather after this, but I may be doing the news too.
Another favorite memory of mine was working with Michael Brooks. He could cover up any of his mistakes so easily and flawlessly, but sometimes he got a little tickled with himself. And one morning he read the news story. It was a serious story. Michael Carneal, the school shooter in Paducah, and he was reading a story saying, and the judges decided to seal Michael Carneal's rectum. Rectum, Rolly. He said rectum. Oh my gosh. For the next 5 to 7 minutes, Michael could not speak. He had tears rolling down his eyes, face. He was out of it.
Brett Martin and Brian Hale and I had just started working together doing the Sunrise Show, and Brett went out to do a live shot at the Salvation Army, and he was talking with a young woman there who proceeded to tell him that she dated a member of the Monkees singing group, Peter Tork. And we just thought that that was the funniest thing on the planet, that she would tell him that she had dated Peter Tork. And to this day, and it's probably been 10 years, every time I hear the song Last Train to Clarksville, I think of the Monkees and I think of that Sunrise live shot, and I just crack up.
Hello everyone, it's me, meteorologist Brian Hale from Kentucky Sunrise. I'm now the chief meteorologist at KGBT in South Texas. Now I chase hurricanes instead of Kentucky snowstorms and tornadoes. Some of the best moments of my television career were spent with WLEX-TV and Kentucky Sunrise. Some of the most fun I've ever had in television, and certainly some of the most serious times in television. I got to work with the likes of Beverly Kirk and Brett Martin, photographer Steve Collier, many different people at WLEX, and of course the people of Central Kentucky. Some of my best memories, specific memories, well, certainly getting more than 2 feet of snow in one snowstorm, covering the big tornado that went through Nicholasville, and of course the True Blue fan buttons. Had to be one of the biggest coups in television history. We had a ball with the True Blue fan buttons, and again, all the people I got to work with, some of whom I still keep in touch with, and we all say the same thing: best television we ever did.
It was absolutely an honor and a privilege to front the morning news for you all and work with some incredible people, from the random weathercaster Stuart Shepard. Boy, he helped me cut my teeth. Gary Johnson, Brian, he was a little kooky.
I just wanted to say what a wonderful job all the people behind the scenes do, and a lot of people don't realize how many people it actually takes to put on a good newscast, and all the news gathering and the effort that goes on, and the producers and the directors and the camera people. They all do just a fabulous job, and of course they make the people who are on the air look good.
Happy anniversary, WLEX-TV, and to everyone.
That was great. You know, as the current anchor of LEX 18 News at Sunrise, every day is new and brings with it experiences that will stay with me for a lifetime. While it's a very early wake-up call, I can say on behalf of our Sunrise crew, it's a joy to continue the Sunrise tradition each morning, bringing Central Kentucky's #1 choice for news to the airways. Thanks for a wonderful 20 years, and have a groovy day.
Well, let's go see some of the archival footage of my good friend Alan Cutler. Now, a lot of people believe that sportscasters are just wannabe athletes. I don't know what would give you that idea. Now watch this move. Alan's going to spike the ball to celebrate his catch.
Now let me slow this down for you, and you got to be asking yourself, what would that do to a man who injured himself in this way? That's what it would do to a man. Kids, this is why you should always wear a cup. That is a lot of moisture we're looking at. So much so, animals were showing up at the studio that day 2 by 2.
Nice to see the prep sports back, and you're sweating like a football player yourself.
We shall continue with LEX 18's 50th anniversary celebration in just a moment.
If Joan Rivers calls, will you tell her I've gone to Walmart?
Good
Good afternoon, Miss Whitney. Here's your basket. Welcome to Walmart.
Oh, look, here's the jewelry. Do you ever worry that you might be over your limit on your Visa card?
Well, if so, then I'll use the Master.
Come along on a shopping spree. Mrs. Whitney goes to Walmart tonight on Central Kentucky's 18 News at 6.
Watch for the real people at a Peacock near you.
In the 90s, the first Gulf War was broadcast live, as was continuing coverage of Bill Clinton's infidelities and O.J. Simpson's murder trial.
Jay Leno succeeded Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, and we were hooked on Friends, Frasier, Seinfeld, ER, The West Wing, and Law and Order. And we became the station of the true blue fan.
There's official.
And then there's your good old-fashioned fun.
Man, I'm glad I picked Kentucky. Who'd have thunk it?
I'm here with the Wildcats of Alan Cutler. Hey, Phil, you just won the national championship. Alan, you've been with us all season. Tell us how you feel.
Great feeling, baby.
Thanks, True Blue fans.
For helping us cover the Cats.
(1992) in what many are still calling the greatest NCAA tournament game ever. Kentucky almost beat the defending champs from Duke. Woods! Yes! We're boycotting that shot hit by you-know-who, public enemy number one, some guy named Christian Laettner. 1994, down by 31 with 15 minutes and 34 seconds to go. Chris Harrison, the forgotten one, started hitting. Everyone started hitting. 11 threes. 50 years from now, it will still be one of the greatest comebacks ever. Walter McCarty's perfect shot beat LSU. 1996, loaded with NBA talent that is still making the big-time bucks. Tony Delk hit 7 threes as Kentucky won their 6th NCAA championship, 76-67 over Syracuse.
I'm here with the Wildcats. I'm here with the Wildcats of Alan Cutler. Hey, Phil, you just won the national championship. Tell me how you feel. I'm going to Disney World. Let's go to Disneyland. Disney World. Alan, you've been with us all season. Tell us how you feel.
Great feeling, baby.
Hey.
1998, UK gets Duke, down 17 with less than 10 minutes to go. Cameron Mills with 3, with 2:15 left, gives Kentucky the lead. Scott Padgett pops from downtown to break the deadlock at 81 as Kentucky goes to the Final Four. After Kentucky beat Duke, the fans, for the most part, were obvious, going crazy, lots of joy. But there was something else that I'll never forget. I've never seen so many Kentucky fans cry after a win. The Cats finally beat Duke. To the NCAA championship, the Cats were getting pounded on the boards and trailed by 10 at the half. The comeback Cats, led by Hashimu Evans, win title number 7 in Tubby's first year. It was the largest halftime deficit in an NCAA basketball championship. Alan Cutler, LEX 18 Sports.
You know, watching this next segment, it's hard to believe English was our first language.
Both Barnes & Noble and Joseph Beth Booksellers have Harry Potter that's hard to say. Harry Potter parties planned for tonight and tomorrow.
Taunting and teasing. How much can...
You know, with Brian Hale, it's not that he can't talk. It's just that apparently he can't see to read the prompter.
Today's winner is Bob East of Lancaster. He's standing in his driveway in Garrett County, and the dog is coming in from Paint Lick Creek. Who knew?
It's a dog.
Oh, my goodness. Now I've lost the ability to read. Oh, that's great. The fog is coming in. I can't see any dog. Thank you, Bob. Thank you so much. We're getting 8 pieces of KFC. Oh, well, it's heck having English as your second language. Loser, yes, I know.
Yes.
Who knew? Anyway, coming up, another look at the weather, and we're going to be looking at the national headlines. Brett?
He says he'll prove the validity, I can't say prove the Kara testing thing, excuse me.
Excuse me.
And downtown...
Two Clinton County men are in custody tonight. Oh, that's easy for me to say. I think I'm in worse shape than they are. They're in custody. I just can't talk.
Here's Nancy trying to say Antoine Walker, but watch after she mispronounces how she really just takes this personally.
Antoine Walker.
Run in 87. You have the women on the Rick Barnes now going after Clemson.
There's still some more of that stuff moving on down towards the south.
No wonder it almost took us 50 years to become #1. Nobody could understand what we're saying. We'll continue with LEX 18's 50th anniversary celebration in just a moment.
No one told you life was gonna be this way. Looks like you're always stuck in second gear. When it hasn't been your day, a week, a month, even your year. I'll be there for you. 'Cause I'm there for you too.
We got an adult male, mid-40s. He's highly opinionated and very volatile.
Let's try to save him anyway. Can we hurry this up? I've got to be in Talladega in 2 hours. Get 2 lines of saline and get the empty ready.
I'll bag him. Get the tube ready.
You know, I think it's his carburetor. Cold blue! He does have a heart. True blue, baby! Yucca!
Your True Blue 18 Action Sports Team. Just what the doctor ordered.
WLEX-TV got a major makeover in 1999 with a brand new state-of-the-art facility.
For the last 40 years, WLEX-TV has been headquartered in this building. A lot of history has been made there, but we got a new millennium coming. Let me take you to our new home. Here we are. Just 200 feet from our old facility, but light years ahead in technology. Hundreds of miles of cable, lightning-fast computers, television cameras ready for the day your TV set catches up. Tools no other station in the Bluegrass has, and now at the fingertips of 18 Action News.
This is the command center for the newsroom. With our new computers and communication systems, we'll be able to bring you the news faster and live from right here.
More coverage, better coverage from anywhere in the world, and that's just for starters.
Every source that comes to this building, cameras, pictures, graphics, news reports from out in the field, satellite shows, soap operas, you name it.
And behind the machines, the best and most dedicated staff of technicians around.
There's TV on, there's somebody here running it. Christmas, Thanksgiving, there's always somebody, some poor soul here.
And way behind the scenes are all these racks filled with digital equipment for the new millennium. Now, what does this mean to you? Well, this is sort of the way TV looks today. In a couple of years, we go digital. This is how sharp the picture will look. Of course, this is the old set. That's gone now, too. This is the new 18 Action News set.
2 cameras here.
The largest single news set in the Bluegrass. Sure, it's gorgeous, but wait till you see what this baby can do. Cameras ready for HD TV, digital audio, and our powerfully accurate storm center. One room packed with you in mind. And throughout the building, the best working environment around.
Much more open, much more light. It has a lot more interaction between the people than we had in our previous facility where we were all kind of blocked off from each other.
Good morning, WLEX-TV.
A lot of changes, but in front of it all, the same people you've come to call your friend. The real people of 18 Action News.
As we began to report the weather more thoroughly in the 1990s, Mother Nature cooperated by putting on a dazzling array of weather. First and foremost, during the early 90s, 1993, the blizzard of 93 brought the heaviest snowfall ever to Kentucky when Hazard picked up over 30 inches of snow. That was followed in the winter of 1994 by an epic snow and ice storm, followed by absolutely brutally cold temperatures. In fact, in Shelbyville, we set the record cold for the entire state of Kentucky during that severe cold outbreak. One thing we haven't talked much about is flooding. And of course, flooding is our biggest weather concern, especially in eastern Kentucky. In 1997, we saw a tremendous flood take place in central and eastern Kentucky, with Falmouth probably being the hardest hit town. With all that flooding that was going on in the hilly terrain of eastern Kentucky, flash flooding is always a big concern for us. Of course, as we got into the latter part of the 90s, it was droughts again that played a role, so the extremes come into play once again. One of the events that's most often talked about with weather was the 18 inches of a dusting. That occurred back in 1998. Now, okay, in my defense, I was not here for that. I cannot be blamed for that forecast. As it was, spectacular amounts of snow fell across the area, and it's a winter that was otherwise snowless, except for that one little period in early February. As the 1990s advanced, so did the power of computers. And you may have noticed it at home with your home computer, going from a very simple machine into the complex things that we now enjoy today. Weather graphic technology took the same kind of leaps, going from that blocky Atari look that we had early on into something very professional, very high quality, almost a movie-like quality to our weather animations and graphics. With that change in quality, it made us easier to help tell the weather story.
You know, TV guys have a tendency, and I'll be honest with you, to be a little soft. Sometimes we get out of shape.
Tell you what, let's do it. Let's ring the dinner bell for every deep breath we take. Here we go.
3, 2, 1. The streaks are over. Not one streak, but two. Number one, this is the first time Bill Curry has won a game on AstroTurf. Number two, Kentucky no longer has the longest losing streak in America, and they earned it. They punched Indiana right in the mouth. Cats win 17-10. At Indiana, Allen Cutler, 18 Action Sports.
It's open window season, not enough air, but there are contracts to fix it. I'm Will Murphy.
Well, what you'll have to do, Bev, is kind of forgive me because I was speechless out there just a while ago. It is great, and we had 70 for the official high for today. 47, by the way. That was the low this morning. Now, let's talk about the current conditions as we look at SkyCam. Clear skies, 66 degrees, humidity at 36%. Pressure is falling at 30.14, winds from the south.
I love this moment here with Jeff. It's like we shot this at a high altitude. Get this man some oxygen, would you please?
That's why. Also shows I am grossly out of shape, too. Have to work on that.
Some more of our shameful moments as we look back 50 years. You're watching LEX 18.
5 years by the Associated Press.
And now, LEX 18 News is the #1 rated news station in Central Kentucky. Weather coverage is an important element of our success. Here's Chief Meteorologist Bill Meck with the latest advancements in weather reporting.
During the first years of the 21st century, tornadoes have taken center stage in our weather extremes. Seems like Pulaski County and Laurel County have taken the brunt of these storms. Areas around Science Hill have seen a couple of tornadoes, and of course a large tornado went through downtown London. It was amazing, though, with these storms that very few injuries occurred. The most spectacular tornado, though, occurred on May 27th of 2004. With that tornado that came into the northwest side of Lexington into Masterson Station, it was an F3 tornado. Miraculously, there were no serious injuries and nobody was killed, even though there was some complete destruction of houses that took place. It was a very fortunate event. Perhaps the advance in technology with the MaxTrack Live Doppler could have had something to do with that. No discussion of historical weather can take place in Lexington without talking about the ice storm. In that weekend of February 2003, more than an inch of ice coated trees and power lines, knocking power out to more than 100,000 people. By the time the lights came back on more than a week later, well, the scars of that storm can still be seen even today if you look up in the trees. What may be the greatest technological leap and certainly one of the most important in terms of a life-saving tool, we did that early in the 21st century here at LEX 18. That was the purchase of the MaxTrack Live Doppler, a tool with the power and accuracy unparalleled anywhere else in Kentucky. It was a tool that came into great use on the night of May 27, 2004, when the tornado struck the Masterson Station area of Lexington.
Now, LEX-18 Storm Tracker weather with MaxTrack Doppler and MaxTrack 3D, the most powerful, most accurate live Doppler in Kentucky.
The old adage is never work with animals. This is why.
Who can forget that special moment of live television when Suzanne Farmer got married?
Come here, llama. Give me a kiss. All right. And now these guys are
Her husband, Fernando Llamas, wasn't much of a looker, though, was he? You ever wonder why llamas are so jumpy and skittish? Well, wonder no more. That'll make you think twice about shaking a man's hand who tucks his pants into his boots. We've secretly switched Suzanne's deodorant with honey.
Go away. What is... All right, this is the last one, I promise. Is it... Ah!
You okay?
Yeah. I didn't say plays on... Ah!
That's good.
Reporter Greg Gerlach must have catnip in his pocket.
Tests have finally begun on the illegal dump in Harrison County. I'm Greg. Okay, ready? Is it rolling? Tests have finally begun on the illegal dump in Harrison County. I'm Greg Gerlach, and I'll have... Okay. Tests have finally... Okay. Get off. Tests have finally begun on the illegal dump in Harrison County. I'm Greg Gerlach, and I'll have that story.
You think Greg had trouble? Tim Weldon's underwear must have been made of catnip. And oh, by the way, if you ever wonder why field reporters sometimes resent anchors, listen and watch the way they laugh at his near-death experience.
Connection News. That's a keeper.
Oh, Lord. You make it look so safe, but why then the big acted lion tamers?
Sue Wiley was such a television pioneer. I mean, she was having maulings before Siegfried and Roy ever got on the boat to come over.
Okay, it's no. Hey, no, no. You want to cut your camera for a minute? Tiger, Tiger. No, no.
Looks like Marv Albert's prom night, doesn't it?
Yes, well, I think we may have to because this is upsetting her quite a bit. Tiger! No! Come, you just hold that chain for a minute.
I hate to question anyone's intelligence, but if a man says, hey, could you hold this chain, and on the other end of it is a tiger who's a little disturbed, I wouldn't do it.
No!
Yeah, that's right. Give him more slack.
No, Tiger. No. No.
I am very happy to report that no animals were harmed during this taping. But if anybody's seen these two guys, please let us know.
We shall continue with LEX-18's 50th anniversary celebration in just a moment.
It's always fun to reminisce and always important to pay tribute to those who have gone before us. It's that history and tradition we take with us as we celebrate our past and look to the future. Here's our current president and general manager, Tim Gilbert.
It's a great privilege to be the general manager of LEX-18. I have the opportunity of working with a group of people who operate at a very high professional level, both within the station and within the community. And I count it the highest point of my professional career. I think the future for LEX-18 and for the television business is very bright. We are just on the verge of entering the digital age, which I think will change dramatically how we view television, how we use television, and how television interacts with our lives. On the local level for LEX-18, our franchise has been and will be local news and interfacing with the community at large. And I think we are well poised to do a responsible job of that. I would like to thank the viewers of LEX-18 for their continued support. In a real way, you are our customers, and we take that very seriously. We hope we can continue to live up to the standards you have set for us and continue to serve the community in Central Kentucky as a whole.
50 years together. What better reason to throw a party? And we did just that. Recently, the WLEX-TV family, new and old, gathered in celebration.